There's no confusion.
All right, welcome everybody to a special edition of the podcast here. We're still not very good at starting. Anyway, Chris is here. Pierce is joining us, at least for a little bit. So,
How you guys doing?
Big night. Doing the national season preview like we do. I think it's our third year doing it the eve of the season.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's exciting. Pierce, I know you don't have much time here, so if you want to just jump right in and just kind of give your thoughts of the Big East overall going into the year, we could start there.
Yeah, I think that the tide is finally shifting in how we look at the Big East. For years, it's been the old Big East is dead. This is the new Big East. They're like the American Conference of college basketball. Well, you can't say that anymore because Villanova is a world champion, which, by the way, 2016, what a weird year. Villanova wins a national championship. The Cubs win a World Series. If you would have told me that, I would think that you're probably a logical person. You tell me Villanova wins a national championship, the Cubs win the World Series, and Donald Trump is now president, I think you're crazy. But Villanova brings back a strong squad. Josh Hart looks like he's going to take that ascension into National Player of the Year status. There's still a little bit of a wonder with Omari Spellman and his situation. Will he be eligible at some time this season? Jalen Brunson, is he going to take that sophomore step up with Archie Diacono gone? So Villanova's a team to watch out for. Xavier's a team that and I was there in St. Louis last year for the Dagger with Wisconsin, and this is a really good team. They'll have to deal with the departures of Jalen Reynolds and James Farr, and the unfortunate situation with Miles Davis. But they still have a good scoring too with Trayvon Blewett, Edmund Summer. So I'm looking forward to seeing Xavier this season. Creighton is going to be good. Watch out for Marcus Foster entering that team, transferring over from Kansas State. And also a team that me personally, I want to see succeed, the Georgetown Hoyas. For the last few years at least, the lusters kind of went away with Georgetown. And I come from, my love for college basketball stems from the 90s, and Georgetown was one of those teams that you feared with John Thompson. So I'm really looking forward to see what Georgetown can do this season. They have no DSR, which, if I'm not mistaken, DSR is a Windy City Bull. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Georgetown can do.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about Georgetown specifically, they haven't really ever been back years. So, it's hard to believe that they're going to struggle again this year just based on history of the program, at least since they joined the Big East, 20, 35 years ago. But, yeah, I mean, and I think there's a real good chance, Villanova, Xavier, Creighton, and Georgetown could be your top four in some order with, maybe Seton Hall popping in there.
Butler kind of finagling their way in.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like last year where the middle of the conference is just up for grabs. I mean, you have a pretty good idea of number 1 and number 2, and then I would say probably 3 through 8 are just question marks. And that it's even if you some people could be higher on St. John's than I am, and you could have them as a question mark too. So now 3 through 9, you're looking at who knows. I mean, I think DePaul is probably going to end up finishing last again.
So we're all out on DePaul.
I mean, not necessarily. I do really like Billy Garrett still. I like Eli Kane a lot, but they lost a lot, and they just have a lot of inexperience coming in, especially down low.
Good luck trying to score down low and defend down low. Now that you don't have Tommy Hamilton, you don't have Mike Henry. It's going to be a struggle for DePaul, which I mean, it's not many different than any other year. But yeah, Dave Lateau definitely has his work cut out for him.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize Levi Cook's coming in, and he's at about 6'11", 330 they have him listed at. So, I mean, if he can get something going.
If I'm not mistaken, he's 300-plus pounds, possibly.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot of, lost size down low, but how well is it going to work over? The game's changing. You're not seeing these tall, big, girthy dudes in the middle. You're seeing guys that can step outside of the paint, shoot a shot, and then move up down the court to get back on defense. Is he able to do that against some of the smaller bigs in the Big East? I'm not sure. So Leitau's going to have to mix and match his pieces and see what works best.
Yeah, and I mean, with DePaul, it's coming. I mean, the recruiting class is pretty good this year. It's already pretty good next year. The new arena is going to be ready, and there is hope on the horizon. It's just a matter of when.
There's a lot of hope going on in Chicago right now.
Yeah.
Blackhawks are playing good. Still coming off of that Cubs drunkenness. Wade is shooting 3-pointers. Shout out to Marquette. Best friend, the Marquette best friends are working it out right now for the Bulls. But yeah, it's going to be a real interesting season within the big. Another thing to look out for, in my mind, you were saying, depending on how you look at St. John's, it could be higher, it could be lower. I feel the same way about Providence, who lost their two biggest pieces with Chris Dunn and Ben Bentil. They get Alpha Diallo, which is a good pickup. Also, Khalif Young. That's a lot of talent that Ed Cooley is losing. I think Rodney Bullock will get the first opportunity to step up. Kyron Cartwright's still there. So it'll be interesting to see with Providence. And also within the conference, who is going to be that next Ben Bentil, who is going to take that ascension into being a draft pick. Ben Bentil, if I'm not mistaken, was a second-round pick to the Celtics.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So who's going to take that next step into, coming from relative obscurity, I guess you could say, into being that draft pick?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a fair question. And I mean, I don't know if I would say Keelan Martin, but he kind of burst on the scene last year, so I don't think he would have quite the, surge that Bentil would have from relative unknownness. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely someone out there that's going to make that leap.
Yeah, I'm definitely in agreement with you there. It's just a matter of finding whoever it is.
Yeah,
it makes that jump into they're suddenly an NBA draft pick because of what they're doing. All right, so shifting away slightly from the Big East, Pierce, I know you're a big Duke guy, so why don't you give some of our listeners who may not be super informed about the Blue Devils what your take is on them, because they have a ton of hype going into their season this year.
Well, some of my confidence right now might stem from, the big weight being off of my shoulders with the Cubs winning. But let's just go ahead and say it. Duke basketball, they are the cream of the crop of college basketball right now. They return virtually the entire team, National Player of the Year, possible with Grayson Allen. I hear a lot of people saying that Grayson Allen might not even be the best player on their team. That's just how good Jason Tatum and Harry Giles are. Now, both of them are dealing with injury. But Coach K has stacked this team. Will Chase Jeter get some more playing time, and will he make good on this playing time? Luke Kennard is a guy that really came on towards the end of the season. He looked well in preseason. I like to see how well he plays. Matt Jones, you still have him, a 3-point specialist and a defensive threat on the wing. Emil Jefferson's coming back for another season. God, I'm so used to saying that there's a Plumlee on the team, and it's so weird this being the first time in maybe a decade that there hasn't been a Plumlee on Duke. So that's gonna get some getting used to. But I came on here last year and I said that North Carolina was going to tank and Kentucky was going to win a national championship. Obviously, that did not happen. So I am trying very hard not to say that Duke will win the national championship, but for right now, Duke is far and away the best team in college basketball.
Yeah, and I mean, Bovada came out with the new odds today. Duke's at 15-4 and the first spot, and then you got Kansas, Kentucky at 7-1. So there's a good margin with how favored Duke is right now.
Seriously.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely Duke 1, Kentucky 2, And that just goes to show when you have the name of a Krzyzewski and a Calipari, you're just going to reload every single year. And, looking at Kentucky with Malik Monk coming in, Isaiah Briscoe, De'Aaron Fox, they're going to be a really good team as well. So those two would be the cream of the crop out of the conference. I'll be interested in seeing how Oregon plays, and also the Big Ten. The Big Ten always puts together a strong conference. Whether people like to admit it or not, the Big Ten's pretty good in basketball. So,
yeah, and I mean, you can even see a team like Villanova making a run. They returned a lot of talent. Indiana has a lot from last year left. It's wide open if Duke doesn't win.
It's very wide open. And Villanova is not that far off from being that top contender. Look, you can say what you want about Duke, and I've said Duke is the best team, but Villanova has one of the best chances of any team in the last 10 years to repeat, because they're bringing back so many guys. They're bringing back so much talent that was there for, God, one of the best college basketball games ever. And, they've been through the ringer with Jay Wright, and Jay Wright is getting the most out of his players. He has the ability to do that. So Villanova has a better shot than anybody in the last decade to repeat.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I know you're going to have to leave in a couple minutes here, but, you just want to give us your Final Four real quick. I know it's not easy to do in November, but,
It's not. I'll go ahead and throw Duke in there. Kentucky also, although I'll give Kentucky a little bit of a room. I think they can, slip up. There's always that odd year that Kentucky ends up slipping up. But I'll go with Duke. I'll go with Duke in the odd year, just like I go with the Blackhawks in the odd years. I'll go with Duke in the odd year to make the Final Four. I'll throw in Villanova also, and just to give a sleeper, if I had to take one, I'm gonna go Michigan State.
Okay.
I'm gonna go Tom Izzo in March, just because I was there last year for the shocker with Middle Tennessee State, and I saw Tom Izzo with his players, his seniors, in the backstage, just despondent. Tom Izzo doesn't want that again, and Tom Izzo is one of those coaches that, when the lights are shining bright, his players step up. So I'll go Duke, Kentucky, Villanova, and Michigan State. Some East Coast love.
Yeah. No, I mean, and really, if you look at where the regionals are, for the most part, that would be pretty good regardless of who's playing where. I mean, you got New York City, Kansas City, Memphis, and you got the one in San Jose that someone's going to have to go out to. But, geographically, I think none of those teams would really have much of an issue.
Yeah, that wouldn't be problematic for pretty much anybody.
Even though I know when Duke made it to the national championship a couple of years ago, they didn't leave North Carolina.
Yeah, and I know UNC did the same thing. So
I think Syracuse too.
Well, no, Syracuse had the opportunity to back in 2014. Yeah. They botched that.
Yeah,
because they ended up losing to I think it was Dayton.
Actually, thinking about it, I don't know if Illinois left Illinois in 2005 because they were at the Horizon for
the conference, not the conference, the regionals.
Yeah, I don't remember where they played the first weekend, but
So that's the Illinois reference for the day. So shout out to all you Illini fans out there. Good luck to you.
Did Tillian ending up signing his letter of intent?
No,
I know Frank Williams' son. Frank Williams' son plays here for Peoria Manual. Sorry, I can't remember his first name off of the top of my head, but he just signed with U of I.
Yeah, verbal commit still has Tillman as a commit, not a letter of intent guy. So there's a chance that Travis Ford gets in there and takes him. And but I mean, really, if you're John Gross and you're losing players to St. Louis, regardless of who's coaching, I mean, that can't happen.
No. Yeah, that can't happen. DeMonte Williams is his name. Yeah. It's the same thing that plagued Bruce Weber. If you're not recruiting at Illinois, you're gonna have to get out.
Yeah.
Gross, this is really his last chance to prove that he can get those Chicago area players, those Illinois players from around the St. Louis area. He's doing a pretty good job getting a legacy in DeMontre Williams from Peoria. If he can get Jeremiah Tillman, that's a really big coup.
Yeah. All right, Pierce. Well, I think you said you had to hop off and get back to work over there.
It's been fun. Now I'm back to the wonderful, magical land of TV news. Never join this business, kids. But yeah, thank you guys for joining. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you for letting me join on with you guys. It's gonna be a fun season. Very glad college basketball is back. After this wonderful, magical season with the Cubs, it's been a nice little transition getting back into the swing of things with basketball. So, looking forward to sharing this Big East season with you all.
All right,
Pierce. We'll be talking to you.
Thank you, guys.
by the way, Rob, Illinois played their first 2 games in the 2005 NCAA tournament at the RCA Dome in Indianapolis.
Okay, so I mean they went Indianapolis, Rosemont, St. Louis.
Which is, they had first round games at the RCA Dome?
Yeah, no, that's...
Why? Who does that help? Usually have the smaller ones there. I wonder who else was there. I don't know why we're talking about this. We're going off the rails again. They had games in Worcester. What? The other teams, okay, at least this one makes sense. Kentucky had the other Indianapolis first round games as a high seed that year.
Yeah.
At least that's somewhat logical.
Anyway, we're waiting on Jeff Parles to come talk about the SEC with us.
Yep, as we took a trip back in time there real quick.
Yes, good times. Yeah, so really nice of Pierce to stop by. He's busy.
It was.
Yeah, so.
Duke and North Carolina are playing football tonight. I wonder if they planned that in light of the fact that college basketball starts tomorrow.
Yeah, I saw that, and it actually confused me for a minute.
Yeah, and well, they have a weird-looking Victory Bell trophy now. You seen it?
No.
You'll have to look it up. It looks really weird. Like, they painted the board that it's on, which looks like a weird-looking mountain board, with one side of Carolina colors and one side of Duke colors. It's the weirdest thing.
I mean, trophies in college football usually are pretty weird.
Yeah, I mean, but this one looks really, really weird.
All right, we are trying to get Jeff on here. As you learned the other day with these live shows, it doesn't always go as planned, but
that's live TV for you, technically TV, but live stream.
Make it happen, and if it doesn't happen, then we'll have to just talk about the SEC on our own.
Yep. See what we can do here.
Let's see.
Oh.
Yep. Did it work?
Yep,
Maybe?
I can see him.
There we go.
What's up, fellas?
Yeah.
Hey.
How's it going?
It's going well. I mean, look, it's going as well as it can possibly go after the past 48 hours. So.
Yeah. So let's just jump right in. You're obviously out there in what they call SEC country, technically.
Right.
So I mean, obviously the SEC is going to be Kentucky and everyone else, but who are some of those teams down the conference who might compete for that second spot?
Well, look, you got to start with Texas A&M. Tyler Davis is back after a monster season. I'll say this: Billy Kennedy has really done a very good job at Texas A&M over the years because he inherited a program that looked always solid, always in the tournament every few years. Our good friend AC Law, that was when they were at their best in the recent times. But look, they're a good team, and Tyler Davis to me is one of the more underrated guys there are in this SEC this year. So I expect them to be right up there. Also, Admon Gilder will be a player to watch on that Texas A&M team as well. And you look across the rest of the SEC. Mike White's got a good team in Florida this time around. He's a coach who's never made the NCAA tournament. They're going to be near the top of the league. And then you have Georgia. To me, Dante Madden's the best player in the country that no one knows about. A good big guy who I expect to end up averaging a double-double. Frazier is still there, the guard. To me, I think for you look at the SEC, Georgia might have the two best non-Kentucky players in the entire league in Frazier and Madden. So that's a team. And Mark Fox, I've always liked Mark Fox. He's an underrated coach. And I expect those three teams to really compete for that second spot. I think when you're looking at the SEC, those are probably your four best teams. Kentucky obviously is loaded. A&M, Florida, and Georgia in some sort of order, with Kentucky one and the other other three, I should say, 2 through 4.
Yeah, no, I mean that definitely I could see that, and Vanderbilt actually is a team who's going to look a little bit different this year with the loss of Wade Baldwin and, new head coach. And Marquette's going to see them tomorrow night. So, what can everyone expect from Vanderbilt this year?
Look, the biggest difference with the Commodores, and you mentioned Wade Baldwin, who was, to me, one of the more underrated guys in the entire country this past year. But the big change is, guys, can we even remember the last time that we remember a Vanderbilt team without Kevin Stallings leading things? The biggest difference is for me with them is that they improved their head coach in getting a Drew, which is kind of amazing that getting a Drew, and Rob, Chris, we know how big of fans of Scott Drew we all are, but Prester's a damn good coach, and he's going to change that team. I think that team, you got to look at the guards. They have a good freshman point guard, Peyton Willis, coming in. He's from Fayetteville. They stole him from Arkansas. I think he's going to be a good player this year for them. And look, the guy that you guys remember from last year, Luke Cornett, a guy who can stretch the floor a little bit as a big guy, but he's probably Vanderbilt's best player for this year. But look, Marquette, it's an interesting matchup right out of the gate for Marquette, especially with the Golden Eagles looking a little bit different than they did from last year. But this is a game that if Marquette's going to be better than expected or good, they win tomorrow night against Vanderbilt.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah,
that's fair. All right, Jeff. Going a little bit off the radar here right now.
Sure.
In the SEC's history, only 2 freshmen have ever won Player of the Year award. Do you think that trend continues in that someone other than a player from Kentucky wins that award, or do we get a third time in conference history that a freshman wins the Player of the Year award?
Look, there's 2 freshmen you got to look at for Kentucky. You got Bam Adebayo, who's a beast. The kid is an absolute beast. And you have Malik Monk, who I think may be one of the best scorers in the entire country. So basically, Chris, what your question comes down to, Deontay Madden is the one guy who could win SEC Player of the Year and keep the trend going. But just looking at those 2 freshmen, looking at Bam and looking at Monk, I don't know how neither of those guys ends up not winning the award. I think it's going to be Malik Monk in the end who ends up being the freshman of the year, or not only the freshman of the year, but the player of the year in the SEC. But look, Davis, Madden, Frazier, Moses Kingsley, who I didn't even mention from Arkansas, who's an excellent player as well. They're all great candidates, but when I think it's all said and done, I think it's going to be Malik Monk. He's going to be a guy who averages 22 a game. And to do that on a Kentucky team that's already loaded, and again, this Kentucky team's not as good as it was 2 years ago, obviously, because that was an all-time great NCAA basketball team. But I think they're going to be better than they were last year. A team that had a lot of players, obviously, Ulis and Murray, and others. But this team is deeper than it was last year. And again, you never can count out Cal. And I think Kentucky, led by the player of the year in the SEC, Malik Monk, they're going to be tough to beat again. So to answer your original question, I expect one of those two Kentucky freshmen to win player of the year.
I had to do a ballot for TeamSpeak Kills, the SEC site for SB Nation. Free plug right there. That'll probably be coming out tomorrow. I guess I'll spoil my player of the year pick. It's not anyone from Kentucky, and you mentioned Luke Cornett from Vanderbilt. My pick is a Vanderbilt player, but it's not Cornett. It's Jeff Roberson.
Look, Jeff Roberson is going to have a monster year, and of course, I don't even mention Jeff Roberson when I talk about Vanderbilt. But look, Roberson is a guy who I think he'll score a ton of points this year, Chris. Yeah. I'm with you on that, and he could steal the award away. But you know what? It just those guys from Kentucky this year, and I really love Madden. I really do. I think he's a guy that no one knows about nationally, and the SEC last year. Look, it stunk. It was a bad league last year. So you look at teams that can possibly make the NCAA tournament and great players in the league. It all starts with those two guys on Georgia and Madden and Frazier. If those two guys underperform what I think they're going to be, then this league's going to be down more than I think. I think this is a league that could be five or six teams in the NCAA tournament.
All right, so before we shift gears here, I mentioned that two freshmen have won SEC Player of the Year before. Can you name them?
Carl Anthony Towns did it 2 years ago, didn't he?
Nope.
No?
Bobby Portis was the Player of the Year 2 years ago. You're close, though.
That's silly. So it was Anthony Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oh wow, how long ago was it?
It was in the 1988-89 season.
Yeah, no chance for me. Who was it?
Chris Jackson.
Okay.
Of LSU. He averaged like 33 points per game.
I mean, the only other guesses I could have thought of were Shaq or going off the grid and Mike Miller.
Shaq was actually not. I'm sorry, he was not the last player to go back-to-back as SEC Player of the Year. That looks like it was Corliss Williamson back when he was in Arkansas.
Yeah, that makes sense because that was back-to-back finals appearances, and Corliss was a damn good player in college.
Yep.
Good NBA career too.
Oh, absolutely. So as you mentioned, your top four in the SEC, you had I believe you said Kentucky, Florida, Texas A&M, and Georgia. We also talked a little bit about Vanderbilt as well.
Sure.
Who's a team that maybe not a lot of people are talking about right now that you think could make some noise this year?
Look, I'll say this: there are two teams I'm looking at, and let's just start with the teams that I'm definitely not looking at, Chris. There are two teams that under no circumstance are going to be anywhere near postseason play this year. One of them is the Tennessee Volunteers, they're going to be really bad. And if it wasn't for Mizzou, who's the other team, we'd be talking about how Tennessee is one of the worst Power 5 teams in the country.
Yes.
But because of how bad Mizzou is going, and again, I work in radio in Columbia, Missouri, and they're sure there will be Mizzou fans who end up listening to this. But this Mizzou team, especially after what I saw last Friday night, where they struggled to beat a mediocre Div 2 team, I don't know how Mizzou's better than a 10-win team. So those two teams automatically out. Look, the one thing with this league, Chris, is you look at the middle of the league, which I have is Arkansas, Alabama, Vanderbilt, Auburn, LSU, and the Mississippi schools. You could see an argument for pretty much all of them. I don't see the argument for Ole Miss. I think they're going to go way down. Just losing Stephon Moody kills that team. And Mississippi State has a lot of young talent. Ben Howland, if Ben Howland can get that young talent to play as one unit, I don't know, they could end up in the top 5 in the SEC. That's probably a little bit of a stretch. I know people are really down on LSU, and they didn't even make the NCAA tournament when they had the number 1 overall pick last year, but they had some pieces. Craig Victor's still a damn good player. Antonio Blankney's still good. That's a team that could surprise people and could be good. But the teams I'm looking at Arkansas. That's the team to look at. And Moses Kingsley is the reason. He's such a damn good player that will really – it's going to be hard for teams to defend him. And I think that's when you have an elite guy like Kingsley, who pretty much is unanimous across the board. Any site you see, Kingsley's a first-team All-SEC guy going into the year. And I expect him to have a monster year. And look, we all know Mike Anderson struggles with teams playing away from Bud Walton. And we know that. But if Arkansas can steal a road game against South Carolina, who's probably the second team up in that bunch after the top four, I think this league can be a 5-bid league. It's a matter of will it be Arkansas or will it be South Carolina being that fifth team. I give the edge slightly to Arkansas just because they have the best player in Kingsley. But South Carolina, look, Frank Martin's team should have made the NCAA tournament last year.
Yes.
There's no reason they should have been left out. And they're going to be peeved that they were left out. And Frank Martin, Frank Martin's a great coach. So for me, South Carolina, Arkansas, those are the two teams to look at after the top four. But really, guys, it wouldn't shock me if anyone that I have ranked 5 through 12, I wouldn't be surprised if any of those teams somehow snuck in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, Arkansas, most notably, per my guy, Tom Stevenson, my basketball guy over at TeamSpeak Kills, they have the most experienced roster in the SEC with 9 upperclassmen on the roster right now.
Yeah, look, and also you got to start imagining that the pressure is going to be on Mike Anderson to win. I mean, they had the one NCAA tournament appearance 2 years ago where they nearly lost to Wofford. Granted, that was a good Wofford team, but look, the pressure's on. Pressure's on. He's got to win. He's got to win now, and I think that Arkansas is the team to look at. That's not in the top four. I think, like Chris and Rob, the big thing is the top four in the SEC to me is pretty sad. It's going to be Kentucky 1, and in whatever order you want to do with Georgia, A&M, and Florida 2 through 4. So, be interesting to see. The middle of the SEC is better than it was last year, though. That's for sure.
I do agree with you that Anderson might be feeling some pressure, and the fact that he's got 3 guys coming on the roster this year that are all from JUCO schools. Orlando Cook, a forward from Connors State Community College, and then Daryl Macon and Jalen Barford, 2 guards from Holmes and Malo State Community College, might suggest that they're in a little bit of a pressure cooker situation. Yeah,
the thing is with Arkansas. One thing with Arkansas, I will say with the 2 guys is that to me, it's a program that look. Nolan Richardson had that program win a national title in the mid-90s. They've never fully gotten back to being anywhere near that good. So I expect them to be a borderline NCAA tournament team, but who knows? They're the biggest wild card in the SEC to me. They really are, even with all that experience.
That's definitely a fair statement there. And I know it looks like freshman Florida center, while we were doing this podcast, freshman forward center Gorjak Gok, I believe that's his name, has been ruled eligible by the NCAA. So he's going to suit up tomorrow for the Gators. So that's a big addition for them.
Yeah, and look, Florida, when I went through this and looked at Florida, I didn't have Gok as playing for good reason. It looked like he was going to be at least out at the very minimum for half of the season. But I looked at Florida team, and Mike White's a good coach, guys. And that's one thing Florida did do well in replacing Billy Donovan. They got a guy that's going to get them. Will Florida ever be a national title contender again? Probably not. But there should be a team that is in the NCAA tournament pretty much every year. And this is the year that starts a run of getting in pretty much every year with Mike White. So I like this Gator team. They're not very much improved from last year.
Yeah, they're very safe, I would say. Is a good word to describe them.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's about it, Jeff. If you want to give us your final four real quick, that's we did that with Pierce. So if you want to,
Oh man. Well, as I told you, in other conversations, I'm picking the Oregon Ducks to win the whole thing. It all depends on how healthy Dylan Brooks gets as the season goes along. But if Brooks comes back and Brooks is the man like he's expected to be and was, this is the year for the Ducks to do it. The Pac-12, Pac-12 is good, and they're going to be tested during the year. So I expect Oregon to be in the Final Four, win the whole thing. Look, the Duke Blue Devils are loaded. Their freshmen have to get their freshmen have to get healthy. So if their freshmen don't get healthy, they'll be in a little bit of trouble. But look, Grayson Allen is a National Player of the Year contender. So even if they don't get their freshmen healthy, they still have enough talent to get back to Glendale this year. The last two slots are difficult. I'm going to put Kansas in there. Bill Self has to get this team to the Final Four. Last year's team, I know Villanova ended up winning the title, and it was awesome to see them win the title, especially being a Big East guy for as long as I've been. But Kansas had more talent than that Villanova team did last year. But Jay Wright outcoached them, and Villanova's players outplayed them in that night. So that's the third team. And look, the fourth team is difficult. I keep coming back to Kentucky when it's all said and done. I think that the two freshmen, especially in Bam and Monk, those guys will get them to a Final Four. They may underachieve in a regular season, especially early on, how difficult the schedule they'll play as they play every year. But I think when it's all said and done, we end up with Oregon, Duke, Kentucky, and Kansas. And it would not stun me. I will tell you this, though, guys. It would not stun me if you get two Pac-12 teams in there. It wouldn't stun me if UCLA gets in instead of either Kentucky or Kansas when it's all said and done.
Wow, okay. You're high on the Bruins.
I'm telling you, Chris, that Pac-12 is going to be really good this year.
Oh no, I don't disagree with that.
Steve Alford's got to get one of these teams farther than the Sweet 16. Yeah. This is a roster to do it with.
Yeah, I mean, Lonzo Ball is going to be a hell of a player.
I will say this also. The one for National Player of the Year, Dennis Smith's the guy to watch. I told Rob this before. Dennis Smith's the guy to watch. So
I agree with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, Jeff, thanks for coming on.
Welcome, guys.
You can listen to Jeff every day on the Big Show, Columbia, Missouri, 4 to 6 on weekdays, and then Saturday mornings from 8 to 10.
Yeah, that's right. KTGR.com for KTGR in Columbia, Mo. So, yeah, it was a good time. We played the great game of Vanderbilt Commodore or Commodore Motown band member today. So it was a good day. So, thanks for having me, guys.
Yep, no problem.
All right. That was, as we said, Jeff Parles, KTGR Columbia. So
as enthusiastic a conversation about SEC basketball that you may find anywhere.
Absolutely. Except
for Team Sweet Hill, another free plug right there.
Me too. Plugging it in here.
Hey, I gotta get some cross viewership here.
Hey, you do you. Good for your brand.
Exactly.
Next up, we have Russ Steinberg coming in, discuss the American and other mid-majors.
Yep, so we are shifting away from the supposed Power 5 conferences in college basketball, even though that's not really a thing.
Okay.
It does not exist. Don't let anyone tell you differently. That's only for football and not for basketball.
Even though it's not really a thing anymore.
Yeah, I do agree with that. Just because
the automatic,
Exactly, and the Big 12's kind of disqualified themselves because they're a terrible conference.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, is he here? Yep.
I'm here.
There we go. Okay.
All right.
Can you see me?
No.
No, we can't.
I mean, it's not really a huge. What does that say?
That's my mistake. It's the.
It's all good, man.
Not a big deal.
What happens when you do these things live?
Yep.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, we can just get going if you want. While
Yeah.
you're trying to figure it out. Yeah. So, I think just starting off, I know we'll get to the mid-majors in a minute. I know you're with Mid-Major Madness too, but yeah, I think first and foremost, at least what I knew you for originally was a UConn guy, and UConn looks to be pretty good again this year, as they've been, every year in the last however many.
I don't know how long.
Yeah. Spent a while carrying the Big East, and now we're over to the American.
Yeah. So I mean, is UConn the favorite in the American this year? I think that's where we'll start first and foremost.
I mean, it's them and Cincinnati. I believe Cincinnati was picked to win the league, but it was really, really close. I think they had only a couple more points than UConn did in that preseason poll. I like Cincinnati. Problem with them is I don't think they're especially deep. UConn, watching them in their 2 exhibition games, and I know you can't, take a whole lot out of that, but their freshmen were really, really good, and I think you're going to see some surprises off of the bench for UConn. Vance Jackson comes to mind immediately as a really good shooter who could maybe be a guy who could shoot the Huskies back into some games when they fall behind. But I think it's a 2-horse race between those two, at least to start.
Okay. All right. And I mean, I don't like to bring this up because, we had to deal with it too, but does the American need to send some teams to the Sweet 16 this year to, start kind of being taken more seriously than just UConn and everyone else?
Yeah, it's not just for the reputation of the league, which of course that would help, but money coming, or with the NCAA tournament money from the old Big East up soon, they need more of those minutes to get paid. It's a financial thing at this point, and the better teams do in the NCAA tournament, the more money they get. And we know that it is not on par with the Power 5 financially, and you need to find any way to bridge that gap that you can, and that's one of them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So I mean, who are some teams other than UConn and Cincinnati that you think could make some noise this year?
What's that?
Other than UConn and Cincinnati, I mean, who do you think can kind of make a run this year, even just getting into the tournament again?
I think obviously starts with them at the top. I really like Houston. To be honest with you, they return a lot from their team last year. They're going to be kind of flying under the radar, I think, to start. Especially since I don't think they have a very difficult schedule in the non-conference. No, they don't. But they're going to sneak up on some guys, I think. SMU is going to be good, not great. It's a weird situation that they're in with, losing Larry Brown from last year. It's not going to be an especially deep league, and that's been the big criticism of the American over the last 4 years, however long it's been in existence. They need the teams at the middle of the pack and at the bottom to really start to pick it up. Something that's interesting to me, all the new coaches that they've brought in, hopefully that will help in terms of recruiting, down the line. Tubby Smith, Memphis, Johnny Dawkins, Mike Dunleavy. There's some big names in this conference now. So, I'd be excited for the future this year, though. I think, like I said, UConn, Cincinnati, hopefully Houston. I think they're going to be good. Hope maybe SMU can sneak in, but I mean, I don't think either of those teams are, second weekend quality.
Okay. Yeah. No, that's fair.
Yeah, I definitely think that's fair as well.
So I mean, who would you say would be your preseason player of the year for the American?
Probably Dedrick Lawson, Memphis.
Okay.
He would be number one. Cincinnati has some guys as well, with Troy Copain leading the way, who one of those guys who seems like he's been in college for 10 years.
Yeah.
Been a thorn in UConn's side that entire time. He could do it too. I think they're the two best players in the league. I wish Memphis had a better core around Lawson, because they're always a fun team to watch, but it's him and I really don't know. So it might be more of a building year for Memphis.
All right.
My question for you now, Russ, is I'm looking at some of the freshmen around the conference this year. Does the Freshman of the Year award for the American come from UConn or the field?
It comes from UConn. It's going to be, I think it's going to be Alterique Gilbert, the guard that they brought in, not just because he was their highest rated recruit. Just watching him in high school, I followed him around the circuit a lot 2 summers ago, and he reminded me so much of like an unpolished, like freshman year Kemba Walker. Same sort of aggressiveness, same sort of style, even had that step back. I think UConn fans are going to love watching him. You're going to get a few, head scratching turnovers, and sometimes he moves a little faster than he could think. But he's who I think ends up being Freshman of the Year. And ultimately, Kevin Olly's a really good recruiter. The other teams in the AAC need to start recruiting at a higher level, because there are some very good programs. Cincinnati, Temple comes to mind, like historically very good basketball programs, and in good locations geographically, Philadelphia, Cincinnati, that just don't recruit well. It hurts the league. What's that?
Even Houston has been historically very good. And they play in Texas, and that's a rich area for basketball recruits. Right,
and I think Houston, though, is on the right track. Kelvin Sampson, I think, is a very good recruiter, and they've brought in some good talent in recent years. But yeah, that's another call too. I mean, one advantage that the American does have is that a lot of their teams are located in significant media markets, so you get that sort of exposure. And I'm just waiting to see a non-UConn team in that conference bring in, a top 20 recruiting class, just to build some excitement around the league.
Yeah.
So, switching gears now to the mid-majors, I think the biggest question is Gonzaga going to be able to survive losing all the seniors and then Sabonis as well? I mean, where are they going into the year?
I think they could be going to Glendale, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I think they're that good. Look at everything they lost, sure, but look what they're bringing in with Nigel Williams-Goss. They have that Karnowski is healthy again. Matthews, the transfer from Cal. They have a really, really good team. It's probably the most talented that Mark Few has had. I hope they could get over that hump and get into the Final Four finally. I think this might be the team to do it. It's a different look, certainly, this year for them. But that's what I'm really excited to see. And I'm excited to see them in the West Coast Conference going up against St. Mary's, the team that doesn't have the star power that Gonzaga does, but returns everybody from what was definitely a quality team last year. I think those two are neck and neck in that conference. It's tough to pick a clear favorite, but they are both teams that can definitely make noise in the tournament.
Yeah, that Gales team won 29 games last year, so they were pretty darn good a year ago. And like you said, they've got a lot of good returnees this year too.
Problem was they didn't play anybody, and that's why they missed the tournament.
Yeah.
And then, moving back across the country, the Atlantic 10, I know a few people were surprised that Rhode Island was ranked to start the year, but that's a talented team too. And I think they're probably going to be competing with Dayton all year for, kind of that team that you don't want to face in the NCAA tournament from a mid-major conference.
Yeah. Rhode Island might have, by the end of the year, the best player in that conference in E.C. Matthews. They might. He was injured, I believe it was the first game of the season last year, didn't play again the rest of the year. So, you don't want to overhype the Rams too much. But they have a very talented team. And then Dayton is experienced. They have an excellent backcourt. They have a fan base that travels well. They're well coached. That's a team that is going to be very, very dangerous in March.
So, who would you say is a mid-major team that probably isn't being talked about too much right now that could make some waves this year?
It's tough to say because Gonzaga, St. Mary's, and those A-10 teams are the first ones that come to mind.
Yeah.
I think San Diego State's going to be very good this year. We're going to see them play Gonzaga in this first weekend, so we're going to learn about them pretty quickly. I think Princeton's going to be very good out of the Ivy League. I think Monmouth returns the core of that team that it had a year ago,
Right.
Including Robertson, that guard. I think they'll be very good. It's funny because I feel like in the mid-majors this year, you have that top tier, that top 4 or 5 teams that you say are really, really good, could be second weekend teams if everything goes well. And then below that, you have a lot of really good teams, but you're not exactly sure how good they are just yet. But we're going to find that out pretty quickly. I think a lot of them did a really good job in scheduling. We're going to see that in the College Hoops Marathon next week, some really, really good games as well. I think Princeton is playing at BYU. BYU could also be a tournament team. So it's going to be a really interesting start to the season, and I think we'll learn a lot quickly.
Okay.
Can't talk about mid-majors without mentioning Wichita State. They're going to look a lot more different this year than they have the past few years. No more Ron Baker, no more Fred VanVleet. What's your projection on them this year, and do they make it back to the NCAA tournament, do you think?
I think they do make it back to the NCAA tournament. I think if there was ever a year for them to be maybe a little bit down, I think this is a good one for them, because I think Northern Iowa will be as well. Illinois State is very good, and that's a team to watch out for, but they have some internal problems of their own right now. It's going to be a different look for Wichita State, as you said. But Marcus McDuffie returns, and Connor Frankamp is someone who I really want to see what he could produce. He's that transfer from Kansas.
Yep.
Kind of came alive in the NCAA tournament for them a couple of years ago, but couldn't really find consistent playing time. Transferred, was good last year. Looking for him to take that next step, be a little bit more consistent on both ends of the court. And if he can really have a breakout year, I think Wichita State could be pretty good. But there are going to be some growing pains. We actually have one of our writers at Mid-Major Madness located in Toronto, where Wichita State played, one of those summer tours. And he went and watched them, and his takeaway was talented, but inexperienced. And that's why, if you remember, you saw Greg Marshall snap in that one game and get a referee. I think it was a lot of frustration for them. But ultimately, by the end, again, a very well-coached team. I think by the end of the season in the Missouri Valley, if they're not already.
Okay.
Yep, that's fair.
Yeah. I just saw your whiteboard back there too. I like that.
Oh yeah, I did that for you.
Oh.
I was working furiously to get my camera working.
I think that's about it for you, Russ. If you want to plug Silver Sword real quick, I know you're already off to a great start this year, but
yeah, we have great. So every year, by every year I mean this is the second year I'm doing it. I have a game called the Silver Sword, and all you do is you pick the winners of all of the Feast Week tournaments. I have a link to it on midmajormadness.com. You could find it there if you want to play. Last year we had about 200 people play. The contest opened today and we already have 250. So we're off to a really good start. Will Leach, founder of Deadspin, he plays it. Matt Norlander plays it from CBS. A lot of writers really get into it, and it's just it's a lot of fun, except for when I have to actually keep score. Then it gets a little tough. By the way, one thing I noticed about this, I have the Google Doc open where I see all of the results coming in. For some reason, in the last 2 hours, everybody has started picking Marquette to win the 2K Classic.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
and it was a whole lot of Michigan, the occasional SMU pick today, but since I don't know about 5:30, it's been a whole lot of Marquette. So people like the Golden Eagles.
And just real quick before you go, Cam Newton, who's actually coming on after you, he wants to know why it is called Silver Sword.
He wants to know why it's called Silver Sword?
Yeah.
He said? Because that is Chaminade's nickname. They are the Chaminade Silver Swords, and it's the one time every year that we get to watch a Division II team play against some national powers, and everybody roots for them. Everyone roots for them to pull off a big upset. So it seemed appropriate. Plus, I send a silver foam sword to the winner.
So you're going to have to change your name in a couple of years? Since they're not going to be playing anymore?
I've thought of that. I haven't made a decision. I don't know what I would replace it with. What is Alaska Anchorage's mascot? Because they play in the Great Alaska Shootout. Maybe I'll do them. If you know that, I'll be very impressed.
Let's see. They're the Seawolves.
No, I'm just going to keep Silver Sword, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you might as well.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Russ, thanks for hopping on. I'm sure we'll be in touch throughout the year.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
No problem.
All right. So that was Russ Steinberg of SB Nation and Mid-Major Madness and
Dimeback.
A couple other things. Like I just said, we're about to get Cam in here.
Not that Cam Newton. Not the one that you think we're talking about, the football player.
Yeah, and I mean it's not even like Office Space where you can be like, oh, I was Michael Bolton first. I think the quarterback was Cam Newton first, but it happens.
Any event. All right. Doing well here so far.
Yeah, we are. We're about halfway through. And if you think it's going dragging or whatever, I don't care. This is fun. We're having fun. So Cam's going to be talking about the ACC instead of the SEC, which he goes to Kentucky and writes for Team Speed Kills, but he did some ACC stuff back in the day, so we asked him to talk about the ACC. So Cam, welcome. Are we good? Nope. We got.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Audio.
issues.
Might have audio issues here.
The video's working.
Yeah.
So I see Miami Hurricane shirt. That's good. Just have to figure out the audio issues with Cam,
Yep.
and then we'll be good.
Of course, with going live here, folks. Sometimes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But tried muting, unmuting. Good. No.
Mhm.
Still no. Sometimes if you go in your settings, you
Yeah,
gotta change the microphone. It switches to one. No. All right. Let's see. Cam, if you want to leave, I can try and invite you again, and then maybe that would work a little bit better. Maybe.
Yeah. All right. Try this
Okay.
again.
Let's see. If it doesn't work this time, we're gonna have to figure something out. All right. Still waiting on Cam. We're not gonna edit this in the podcast either, so okay.
Are we good?
Nope. Oh man.
Nope.
Okay. I don't know what we're gonna do here. We might just have to go forward on our own.
Not sure.
I really would like to have Cam on, but if we can't get the audio working, there's not a whole bunch we can do about it.
Hold on. He's trying headphones now.
Headphones might work. If headphones don't work, then nope.
Uh,
It's frustrating because I see him trying to talk.
yeah.
It's just not coming through. So, we might have to just kind of shift gears here. I can't think of anything else. I mean,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
you can think of something.
Obviously, we can see him talking, but
Yeah, no, I know it's frustrating because
very. We can't. Did you check your audio settings?
if you go to settings, sometimes you can change it from.
Yeah, because it might be because there might be not default but built-in output. So check
Click
there.
a little gear.
And click the gear at the top of the screen. See what it's set at.
All right, we might have to just
Yeah.
take the L here. Cam, we really do appreciate you coming on. Trying to make it work. I know you got your yeah.
Yep.
But we'll have you on sometime throughout the season. Maybe when we get all this hashed out. So, thanks, Cam.
Mm.
All right.
All right. Anyways, we try to bounce back from that. Unfortunately, we're not able to get Cam on here, but we'll definitely try to make that happen as the season progresses. So,
So we are either going to talk about the ACC right now, or Thomas Bennett's going to come out and talk about the Big Ten with us. So
why don't we try that?
we're gonna. I just said he can come on right now if he wants to.
Yeah.
So we're waiting for him to get back to us. Anyway.
In the end, once again, we'd like to apologize for the technical difficulties there. Then those are the breaks with when we go live. Can't pre-record this stuff. So.
All right. Thomas will be on at about 9:20 or 9:30 after our Big 12 guest, who is coming on about 10 minutes. So we will go through the ACC real quick.
Okay.
So obviously there's Duke. We talked about Duke earlier. Pierce talked about Duke. They're going to be good. The one thing that could slow them down maybe is what has happened to them so far is they're getting banged up pretty bad.
Yeah.
And, that could be a problem. And, another thing about freshman-heavy teams is, like we saw the Jabari year, they're not always ready for the tournament for whatever reason. I think that team with Jabari was very good.
Yeah, no, they really were, but like you said, the issue with them was they had a really good offense. They had their adjusted offensive efficiency was 124.1, which at the time was a Ken Palm record, if I'm not mistaken. But their defense was an issue. Their over reliance on the 3-point ball was an issue. But this team is a little obviously molded a bit differently. Size to their advantage. They'll obviously still shoot the 3-point ball often. So don't be surprised if they continue to shoot from the outside. But like Rob alluded to, their injury issues right now are plaguing them. I know Harry Giles is hurt. I believe it was Marquez Bolden who recently got injured. So they're going to need – the freshmen need to get healthy, and because they're probably one of the bigger, pieces to the puzzle for the Blue Devils this year. But if they play up to par, they are probably the most talented team in the country and have one of the best coaches in the country, if not the best coach. So you mix great talent with great coaching, you usually get results. But elsewhere in the ACC, you'll still have Virginia, you'll still have UNC, who, while both teams obviously lost a lot from their versions last year, still come back with a decent chunk of talent with a bunch of different expectations. Virginia still having London Perrantes on their roster. UNC may have lost, Marcus Page from a year ago.
I think Branson would probably be the bigger loss for UNC.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. They still have Nate Britt. They still have Isaiah Hicks and Kennedy Meeks and Justin Jackson. So
Seventh Woods is very good.
Yep, Seventh Woods also a very great name, along with Brandon Robinson and Tony Bradley as far as their other recruits go. You can't ever really count UNC out.
No, I think my problem with them is they seem to be lacking depth, especially in terms of big men. They're going to be relying, it looks like, when Kennedy Meeks isn't on the floor, it's going to be freshman Tony Bradley backing him up at center, or Isaiah Hicks, depending on who's, at the other. Between the 4 and the 5, they kind of have 3 traditional bigs.
Yeah.
But Jackson's pretty tall, too. He can slide to maybe the 4 if you put Hicks at the 5. So, there are things they can do. But if you get a game where maybe 1 or 2 of those 3 or 4 players are in foul trouble, and with bigs that happens, then you could be having a bit of an issue.
Exactly. So, yeah, the Tar Heels could be suffering from a little bit of depth down low. Virginia, I think, they're going to be good, but they're going to need to somehow replace Malcolm Brogdon and Anthony Gill. And that's no easy task, not even with the talent that they have. I know they do have some good freshmen coming in this year, but it's not always the easiest transition. Plus, we've seen what's played UVA before and what will likely play them again. They play so insanely slow at times. So
yeah, and it wasn't that the slow play was what did them in last year either. No. They just they couldn't beat Syracuse for whatever reason. I think it was they were beating them.
Yeah, no, they were.
They were beating them pretty badly in the second half, and then it might have been slow play. But you got 2 teams that don't play particularly fast, and one of them won. That's some great analysis. But further down the conference, you got teams like NC State with Dennis Smith, who Jeff mentioned at the top of the show,
and then Clemson with Blossomgame, who's one of the most talented players in the country with a great name as well.
Yeah, but the thing about Clemson, that's all they have.
Yeah, that's true. It will just mostly be the Jaron Blossomgame show for Clemson this year, but that could be enough for them. So you never know.
It could be enough for them to beat, the Georgia Techs or maybe Wake Forest of the conference, but it's going to be hard to beat the upper echelon teams.
Yeah, obviously, you can't always go with a one-man show there, but I do kind of like Wake Forest this year just a little bit to improve slightly.
Yeah,
I know their projected KenPom record is only at 6-12, so the computers are not very high on them, but I certainly think they're taking good strides down in Winston-Salem. Syracuse will be good again in the middle, kind of the middle of the pack there. Taurine Thompson and Tyus Battle are going to be two terrific freshmen. Battle from actually right around my area. He went to Gil St. Bernard's, played in my high school's basketball league. Apparently destroyed them. I mean, that's probably not really much of a difficult task to beat a public league school, but nonetheless, Battle and Thompson are going to both be very good. I believe they brought back Tyler Wyden this year, so yeah, they did. So
and
he's
what's from Providence?
Yeah, Chuckwood.
Yeah.
So they'll still have him. They still have Tyler Roberson as well. So, and apparently, from what I saw, they're going to be playing man defense this year, which that's a bit of a change from what we've come to know from Syracuse the past 3 decades. So
yeah.
Well, of course, the Big East will get to know Syracuse quite a lot this year. They're not exactly shying away from playing any of the teams in that conference. In our conference,
nice. It's going to be kind of cool when Georgetown goes there for Jim Boeheim's last Georgetown-Syracuse game. John Thompson Jr. is going to be up there. I'm sure they'll have something going on.
Yep, and they also will be hosting an improved St. John's team, which should be fun as well. If I'm not mistaken, the last time they hosted St. John's, never mind. They did not win that game.
And as long as Jim Boeheim can stay out of trouble between now and then, that game will actually count. So, I think my biggest question with Syracuse is, and this is just going forward. This is thinking ahead. Is Mike Hopkins going to be the guy still after he wasn't great in that 9-game sample?
Yeah, and I mean, obviously that's a little bit of a small sample size, but it was a third of the season. That is a decent chunk. They'll have to do some evaluating there, but Syracuse, it's a decent job. I wouldn't say it's a great job because mostly due to location, because it is up in the middle of nowhere in upstate New York, and you're asking college kids to come up there where it's cold as heck. So really the remarkable things that they've done in with that program the past, God knows how long.
It might be similar to Florida, where one coach made it seem like a pretty good job. I mean, obviously they had the one national championship in 125 years, and Florida had 2 in a row. But
we'll try to simmer down a little bit. I don't want to totally alienate the Georgetown people who might be listening to this podcast.
Exactly. I mean, the UCC, they're going to be what they usually are. They're going to send, 8 or 9 teams to the tournament. One of them will make the Final Four. I mean, it's probability. I mean,
exactly. I know that, there's people saying, oh, maybe they'll send 10 or 11 teams to the conference. I don't know about that.
I mean, I'm not going to crown Duke. I'm not going to crown anyone. It's November.
No. Yeah. Definitely not.
So, I think Duke is probably the best team in the country right now. Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm looking forward to watching them play Kansas and then play Michigan State. It's at Michigan State. That's a Big Ten ACC crossover game. That's at Cameron. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And I definitely look forward to watching a non-Jamie Dixon-led Pitt team.
Yeah.
Josh Pastner at Georgia Tech should be interesting. Boston College is probably going to be awful again. Jared Dudley not walking through that door.
Are they? They were. I think they're still the lowest. No, never mind. They're actually higher up in KenPom this year than years past. They're actually up to 154.
Yeah, they were 226 last year.
Yeah, they were worse than Rutgers last year. And this year, the lowest power conference team is Rutgers at 191.
What a shock.
Yeah, I know.
What a shock.
Yeah, Rutgers, they play DePaul to open the final season of the Horizon next week. So,
All right, so ACC evaluation. The conference is going to be pretty good. Duke is probably going to be at the forefront with UNC, Virginia, Louisville, who we didn't discuss, coming off of their their self-postseason ban.
Yeah, they'll be back.
Well, they'll be very good again. They're what you've expected from Louisville of years past will probably happen again. They'll be very good defensively, efficient enough on offense. So there's lots to like there. And this conference, it has the benefit of having some good individual players in Dennis Smith and Blossom Game and all the guys at Duke.
Mm-hmm.
And Beecham at Notre Dame, I know will be fun to watch. I believe Dwayne Bacon is still at Florida State, correct?
Yeah. Yes.
So he's still there with great name for a kid. Good player as well. So FSU will be what they usually are. We'll see if Vatek can finally make a step forward with Buzz Williams at the helm, former Marquette coach. So yeah, there's lots to like with the ACC from an individual player standpoint and a team perspective. But we'll see what they do this
year. Yeah. So I think that about covers it for the ACC.
Yep.
So we'll just keep moving right on to the Big 12 as we work to get our next guest in here. Hopefully, don't suffer the issues that we suffered. Not going to try and say his name because
I was wondering if you were gonna bring it up, but
no, we're gonna have him do it because I'm not gonna mess it up.
Yeah, I don't want to butchering anything.
Yeah. So just while that comes to be, real quick, I touched on him earlier, but the betting odds came out today. Bovada, Duke is at 15-4, and then Kansas and Kentucky are at 7-1. So Duke's a pretty heavy favorite. And then you go down to 16-1. It's Arizona, North Carolina, Oregon, and Wisconsin.
Those aren't bad picks. I'm surprised that Creighton's not on the board.
Yeah, That's been strange. I don't know quite why Creighton has not been listed all summer.
St. John's is on the board, right?
Yeah. And
Vegas showing absolutely no respect for the Great Plains.
Villanova's at 20-1, which is actually pretty good value.
That's really good value.
Xavier's at 40-1, which is fairly good value as well. So,
agree with that.
Yeah. So, wait a moment here. There we go.
All right.
We have audio this time. Good.
How's it going, guys?
Yep. All right.
Yeah, there we go.
How's it going, y'all?
Good, man. If you just want to introduce yourself real quick, we didn't want to say your last name because it's.
Definitely. Yeah. So I'm Brendan Dworzinski. I'm the program director at KGHK Lawrence at the good old University of Kansas. Also a writer for SB Nation's RockChalkTalk.com.
All right. So
we have Mizzou and Kansas on one podcast. Hopefully, we can be able to have any combustions here.
Yeah, we'll have to play nice here.
So just jumping right in, Kansas is probably going to win the Big 12 again, right?
Yeah, it's got to be that way. I mean, it's always going to be tough to play in the conference. There's a lot of good coaches, a lot of good players. But without Heald, Niang's gone, and Kansas just reloads every year. You can make the argument the best backcourt in the country again. Argument, of course. But it's looking like it's going to be a shock if anyone other than KU wins it.
Yeah. I mean, they have a really nice non-conference schedule this year with even just the first two games being Indiana and Duke. A couple nice tests for those freshmen just to get their feet wet right away.
Yeah, it's been a staple of the recent Bill Self era to have these tough non-conference games to lead things off, which as a fan is great because you get to see, these top-tier basketball teams play against each other, but it also gives some of the younger guys and really the whole team a chance to, go against real competition early on, which I think in the long run is beneficial for a team that's going to have a tough conference slate.
Yeah. So one of the criticisms of Bill Self, at least the past couple of years, is that, he gets these prize freshmen and then he doesn't necessarily use them like people think he should be. I mean, is that going to happen to Josh Jackson, do you think? Or, Josh Jackson.
Yeah, so that's one of the interesting things, because I saw today that a bunch of places are saying he's a candidate for National Player of the Year, and I just don't think it's going to happen. That's just not the way Self's offensive systems work. I think he's going to get plenty of run. I think he's incredibly talented. There are people who are saying, maybe he's even better than Andrew Wiggins was, which I don't know if we can say that. He's never played a real game. But I think it's a little too much to expect he may be a Player of the Year candidate. The talent is there. But with so many other options, you've got Frank Mason, you've got Devontae Graham, who I think almost may have a better chance of winning an award like that. So I think he's still going to look good. He's still going to have a good year, but I don't think he's going to stand out and be like, wow, this guy is clearly the best in the country.
Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, as far as from a Kansas perspective, Landon Lucas and Devontae Graham and Mason are going to grab all the headlines along with Josh Jackson. Who do you think is a player on that roster that could have the possibility of breaking out this year?
Thrilled you asked, and I was really high on this guy last year, and he really didn't play much, under 5 minutes per game last year. Did get some run in the first round of the NCAA tournament, though, and that's LeGerald Vick. He's actually going to be in the starting lineup for the opening game against Indiana. Self is going to run a 4-guard set to start things off. And he is a good shooter, incredibly athletic. He's quick. And in a more small ball lineup that Self's going to try to run this year, he's going to be a key part of that. He can score. He's got all the athleticism. He just found himself not performing at the beginning of last season. So he ended up falling back on the bench when you've got a backcourt like they had last year with Mason, Graham, and, of course, the now departed Wayne Selden. So I think that Vick is probably the biggest breakout candidate. You could also look at Carlton Bragg, too, who's essentially stepping in to Perry Ellis' spot this year at the 4 most of the time. So either of them, but I think Vick is probably going to get a lot of run, especially at the start of the year.
All right, cool.
So just shifting gears and stepping away from Kansas, who do you have as the rest of the top 3 or so in the Big 12?
I think you've got to look. It's the usual suspects in the past years. I think that Iowa State, Oklahoma, and West Virginia are all going to be up there. Those are all teams that give Kansas a lot of trouble too. Oklahoma losing Buddy Hield, that's obviously huge for them. They still got a good coach in Kruger. They still have a decent roster. Looking at Iowa State, I think Monty Morris is going to have an unbelievable year. Preseason Big 12 Player of the Year. He is a guy who has frustrated Kansas for years now. I think he's going to step up. And then also West Virginia. I mean, the way they play ball, if they are able, obviously any team that plays the press as much as they do, if they are able to actually succeed on offense, they're going to give any team troubles. And going to Morgantown, given me more heart palpitations than watching any other games over the past few years. And that is a little house of horrors for a lot of teams, not just KU. So I think it's going to be those 3 again. I think Texas is probably going to linger around. I wouldn't even be surprised to see some of the other teams be competitive, but I think it's going to be the same 3 or 4 teams we've seen the last few years.
Yeah. And I mean, you bring up Texas, they still kind of look like they might be a year away, but they're trending upward. So, yeah, I think it's a safe bet to have the same couple teams as last couple years being up there. Oklahoma obviously took a step back, but they have a couple good pieces still.
Yeah, Oklahoma is going to be tough. It's always tough to go up against the team, and I still think that you can make the argument the Big 12 has the best slate of coaches in the country. I know several different conferences have that, but when you have a conference with Bill Self, with Lon Kruger, Prom actually had a really good year last year, better than I thought he would in his debut year for Iowa State. You've got Jamie Dixon in the conference now, who, while not necessarily a top-tier coach, he's going to bring a lot more competition to TCU. So it's hard to play any game in the Big 12. And when you've got so many good coaches around, it's just going to be more difficult. So I think it's going to be very competitive again, but I just don't think talent-wise anyone's going to be able to match up with KU this year.
I'm glad you brought up Dixon at TCU because I was just going to ask you about him. Obviously, I wouldn't say that hire came out of nowhere, but it certainly was a bit surprising that Pitt finally decided to let him go. What did you make of that hire, and do you think that he will give that Horned Frogs program a result that it kind of needed?
I think it was definitely I think it was a really good hire. I mean, he's an established coach. He's been around for years. He's a pretty solid recruiter. Coming back to his alma mater is huge. You're going to get a lot more fan support when you do something like that. The boosters are going to be happy about that. And it's interesting because earlier, a few weeks ago at the Big 12 Media Days at the Sprint Center in Kansas City, we sent a few guys there, and obviously everybody was forming Bill Sell, Frank Mason, and the KU crew. But it seemed like there was almost no interest in TCU, and I think that's a good thing. Not that they've exactly been a powerhouse in recent years, but I think given a year or two to actually develop and let Dixon do his thing, put his system in place, get his players, is going to be great for that team. And I think they're probably looking at a 10th place finish in the Big 12 again, but I think they're going to be a lot more competitive than they have been the last 2 or 3 years.
Speaking of competitive teams and staying in that state of Texas, last year Texas Tech kind of surprised many by getting in the NCAA tournament for the first time in a few years. A lot of Lubbock past couple years, including 8 years back in 2011. Where do you project them this time around? Now you had coaching Chris Beard, who was at Arkansas Little Rock last year.
Yeah, and again, it's a tough situation to peg some of these teams. And you've got your top-tier teams, and then in the middle you're going to have your teams like Texas, like Texas Tech. And I think Oklahoma State's going to be in this group too. I was surprised as well, and getting to see Texas Tech up close and personal the day KU officially clinched the Big 12 championship again last season. That's a good team. That is a scrappy team, and they've got some shooters. Every team loses a few guys every year, but they actually were one of the most impressive teams to me. They didn't have a great record overall in the Big 12, but they were in. You're looking at a peak, maybe 4th in the Big 12 this year. I don't think they finish any lower than 7th, though, which still may be good enough for another NCAA tournament bid.
Yeah, that's fair with me.
Yeah. So, going into the year, who would you say would be your kind of all Big 12 first team?
Oh, that's tough. And you look at – I think Monty Morris has to be on there from Iowa State. I mean, the guy is just – he can do everything for you. He really can. I'll try to keep my homer out of this as much as possible. But if we're looking at 3 guards, I think you definitely have to at least look at Frank Mason and Devontae Graham. I mean, there's a reason that the two of them are being argued for possibly being the best front court or backcourt, I should say, in the entire country. You've got the shooting, you've got the defense, and improving defense, especially with Devontae Graham. So I think you're probably looking at putting the 2 of them back there if you're looking at a 3-guard look. And from there are just a lot of good players all around that are going to play well. I think Kadeem Latin, if he's able to improve his offensive game, might be a dark horse candidate to make the list. He had a really good year for Oklahoma last year, was not particularly good on the offensive end, but he's a defensive force, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him get some kind of opportunity like that. And after that, it's hard to fill in that 5 spot. Maybe you look at a Landon Lucas, who really developed his last year, went on for Kansas, and was a huge part of that team. You can go and look at one of the guys for Texas, young guy in James Banks. He's going to be a freshman, but Texas had a really good run of big men recently, so we'll see if he's able to step up and play. You look at Baylor; they've had really good play from their big men in recent years. And again, a lot of players have left recently as well. You may even look at a Jonathan Davis from Baylor. He had a good year, not as much as the big forward, but it's really hard to fill in there. At the start of the year, I would say Landon Lucas, you could fit in that spot, but I would not be surprised to see any one of several young big men step up from the conference.
All right, one last question here before we probably talk Final Four picks as we've done with some of our guests here. I noticed one thing we haven't really touched on here. We'll talk about the Big 12 is Kansas State. Wildcats went 15-7 2 years ago, 17-15 last year, missed the NCAA tournament again. Is this a make or break year for Bruce Weber, or how much pressure do you think is on him right now?
I think honestly last year should have been a make or break year for Bruce Weber, because he comes in, he had some good teams for a couple of years, teams that were competing at the top of the Big 12, and last year it's just been a steady decline over the past couple of years. And this is not a particularly talented roster for the Wildcats this year. And if you look back on Bruce Weber's career, and I don't mean to rip into him too much, but he hasn't really done anything with his own talent, or much of it, since his early years at Illinois, when he still had plenty of Bill Self players, or even before that when he was at Southern Illinois, where he had a successful run. But again, you're competing at a much different level. And I think if Kansas State does not at least make the big dance this year, he's got to go. And Kansas State has to move on. I know they invested the money in him. But again, this is not a particularly talented roster. Wesley Iwundu, probably their most talented player, and that's putting him in, a lower tier of best. I think it would be NCAA tournament or bust this year for Bruce Weber. And to be quite honest with you, when Oklahoma State and TCU were hiring new coaches in the offseason, I'm shocked Kansas State didn't already hire a new coach.
Yeah, you certainly don't need to talk about Bruce Weber and having success with his, not his own players, with Rob over here. So
yeah, and like having grown up in the Chicagoland area, this child of two graduates of the University of Illinois, I was a big Illini fan growing up, and I remember the excitement when he was coaching the Bill Self players, and then okay, well these are your guys, and the team is going nowhere and getting worse. So I think this has to be one of his best coaching jobs this year. Otherwise, he's going to be running the town. Manhattan's not going to take that much failure.
That sounds about right to me.
Yeah. So if you want to go ahead and give us your Final Four picks here, I know it's early, but
All right. So I'm going to throw Kansas in there because I'm a homer, and I'm it just comes naturally. I think Duke has just so much talent. It's hard to throw this in there. I'm a little lenient to put Villanova in there. I know they're in the top 4 this year, preseason. They did lose a lot, but they're tough. I'd probably lean on them somewhere in the Elite 8 range. I think they have an outside chance of getting there. Kentucky, I think, too. I know I'm going a lot of chalk here, but it just seems like an easy pick. But dark horse, I'm going to think Wisconsin out of the Big Ten. I think you've still got a lot of players, and I think this is going to be like the season for Nigel Hayes. I think this is where he's going to prove if he can really be considered an elite talent, if he's got an NBA future, things like that. I think he's going to have a really good year for Wisconsin. I would not be surprised at all to see the Badgers make it to the Final Four. So KU, Duke, Kentucky, and outside chance for Wisconsin.
Yeah, I really like that Badgers team. They're returning basically everybody. So
Yeah, and I mean, the thing about Kansas, if they get a high seed, they're going probably Tulsa and then Kansas City, so they don't have a particularly tough road geographically.
Yeah, you are looking at potential home games, essentially, when you get some of these, especially if the Jayhawks end up in Kansas City. I mean, that's a home court advantage that most teams don't get in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. All right, I believe that's about it, man. Thanks for coming on. Like Brendan said, you can find his stuff at Rock Chalk Talk or a couple other places I believe you're at.
KGHK Lawrence, some great student radio out there. LastWordOnSports.com, plenty of different places. So check it out. Guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. And good luck with the rest of the show.
Yeah,
thank you.
All right.
Right.
Yeah, that was good.
All right, so thanks to Brendan for coming on the show. Looks like based on the time schedule here, we're going to only have about 2 minutes of layover before we get Thomas on here.
Which is nice. Then after Thomas is done, we have to run through the Pac-12 real quick, and then we'll preview this weekend's games.
Yep.
Big East, and then we'll be done. Short turnaround. Be back Monday for Gavitt games.
Yep, and we've almost been talking for about 2 hours now. I'm surprised that people would still be listening.
It'll end up being about 2 hours when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
And you know what? We're having a good time. I think, and that's why I wanted to bring in the guests, because you can get a different opinion. You can hear some different voices. You're not just listening to us on and on.
Exactly, and a lot of our guests so far have been very, very good. So I'd like to thank them for joining us. They're providing some good answers, some good depth to our questions here, which some might seem simpler than others, but we're happy with the responses.
Just a little bit of Big East news here. Brian Bowen is visiting Creighton tonight, and I would imagine tomorrow for the game. So, home opener, he's going to get to see CenturyLink in full force.
Yes.
So, it's exciting. It's exciting.
Absolutely. That's Bowen, of course, a 5-star recruit who's considering Creighton. Welcome to 2016.
Yeah. All right, let's get Thomas's invite out here.
Yep.
Talk a little Big Ten. Always fun.
Our favorite conference.
Like we said, we'll be talking about the Big Ten a lot in the next week with the Gavitt games coming. But I do want to ask Thomas about a certain team that has a nut for their mascot, just to see if they are as good as advertised. So, a couple preview points when Thomas gets here.
Yep.
Yeah, the Big Ten should be pretty good this year, as it usually is.
Yeah. I think before we get started, I think it's going to be pretty top heavy, if anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, they do still have Rutgers and Illinois, who's not particularly good, Minnesota, Nebraska.
Exactly.
All teams that will play Big East teams this year, I think, except for Illinois.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, Purdue and whatnot, but
yeah. Yes. So, the Big Ten last year obviously was shut out of the Final Four.
They were.
A bit of a down year for them, especially after the previous 2 years when they had Wisconsin kind of dominating and then Michigan a couple years back.
Michigan State also, who made the Final Four back in 2015, joining Wisconsin.
Yep.
Eventual national teams.
Yes, and Ohio State had their run.
Yep.
2 runs actually.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've been good. It's just last year was a bit of a blip. So we'll see if that's a sign of things to come or an anomaly. But based on the talent that's at the top of that conference right now, I think that's probably going to be an anomaly. So,
but important thing to remember about the Big Ten is they did lose a lot of talented seniors in Denzel Valentine, AJ Hammonds, Yogi Ferrell. So they did retool. They have strong freshmen. They have strong guys that stayed, like Nigel Hayes
and Bronson Koenig, who Xavier fans.
Yes, Caleb Swanigan, another 10-year-old Trimble. No, there's talent. There's talent in the Big Ten. I believe Troy Williams stayed at Indiana.
I think you might be right. I know they do have Anunoby still.
Yeah. Troy Williams. Nope, Troy Williams left.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they have Blackman. That's who it was. They still have James Blackman.
Yeah.
And Thomas Bryant. So the Hoosiers are still going to be pretty loaded this year.
Yes. So, while we wait, we could get into the Pac-12 a little bit. And then we'll go back to it. But, for the Pac-12, I think it's the first year in a while that Arizona's probably not the preseason favorite.
Yeah, certainly the Ducks have come on, and after 2 years of making the NCAA tournament and running into great Wisconsin teams and not being on and falling on the short end of the stick, they finally had their breakout in last year's NCAA tournament, getting all the way to the Elite Eight before eventually being smacked by Oklahoma. But certainly you can't take anything away from that Oregon team, and that team definitely got better as the season went on, even without former Villanova Wildcat Dylan Ennis, who had transferred there, who will be eligible this year.
Yeah, and they kept a lot of talent from last year. I know Elgin Cook's gone, but Dylan Brooks is there, provided he's able to play in the next few weeks. Tyler Dorsey came back. Chris Boucher is back. Like you said, Ennis is going to be able to play. And then they got guys like Peyton Pritchard to come in and kind of be of help also. And then the other day they got a 5-star recruit. So, Oregon's on the upswing.
Yes. Oregon, out of nowhere, is becoming a basketball school.
Yeah.
Usually
Yeah.
known for their football, Oregon basketball is about to get another level, another
And,
prominence of sort.
Dana Ullman was pretty good. Oh, we
Oh.
got Thomas. Good. There we go. Thomas, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Pretty well. Pretty well.
So yeah, getting into the Big Ten here, it's a little bit different than the past couple of years in that I don't know if there's necessarily a definitive favorite right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, going back last year, Maryland comes in as, I want to say, unanimous champion or preseason champion, of course. And according to the media, year before that, it's Michigan State. It seems like for at least going back 3-4 years, there's been one clear favorite. I use the air quotes there because most of these teams didn't end up winning the championship. But this year, though, I think you have 4 teams at the top. You got Indiana, you got Michigan State, you got Purdue, and Wisconsin. I think one of those 4 teams is going to end up winning the title. But I don't see a significant divide among those 4. I think, even in the AP poll, I think they're all within like 6-7 team or ranking.
Yeah. So who would you have as your favorite going in? There's obviously a lot to like about Wisconsin, a lot Indiana, Michigan State.
Right now, I got Wisconsin as my favorite. Certainly just the general depth and talent on that team. But the thing for me, what I like to look for is, number one, do you have a star player? Because almost always the Big Ten champion is going to have a legitimate star. They got Nigel Hayes, check. What's your starting lineup looking like? Do you have NBA talent on there? They do. And really, the whole starting lineup returns. And then on top of that, who's your coach? They got Greg Gard, who has done an excellent job in his first half a year, I should say, back for year 1.5/2. And then on top of that, you got guys who can improve a lot. Ethan Happ, Big Ten Freshman of the Year last year, was excellent filling in, trying to fill in for Frank Kaminsky, I should say. But their ceiling is above what it was last year, and I do think they're the team who's going to end up coming home with the crown.
Yeah, okay. And you talk about some of these teams that are returning a decent amount of talent, but then you have a team like Iowa where they lost a lot. Do you think Iowa's got a chance to compete this year? Or, because if you look at KenPom, they're projected right around that 18-win mark, 500 in conference play.
Yeah. There's 2 teams that are in that same realm for the Big Ten. First you got Maryland, who last year, as I mentioned, comes in heavy favorite, picked by a ton of people to make the Final Four or win the national championship. Obviously, they don't, but they had a good season overall. But they lose 4 or 5 starters. Iowa's in a very similar place. They lose 4 or 5 starters. The difference, though, Maryland has been recruiting at a very, very high level with Mark Turgeon. Iowa hasn't as much, but the good thing with Iowa is they have a proven coach in Fran McCaffrey. They have Peter Jok back, who I kind of like as a wild card Big Ten Player of the Year candidate as well. I think he's going to be a scoring machine. And then you do add in, I think they're going to be right on the bubble. To be honest, I don't really have a good feeling one way or the other whether they make it in, but I think they're going to be in that conversation on the final week of the season, and we'll see what they do in the Big Ten tournament.
Okay. And, when the KenPom rankings came out with Ohio State in the top 15, everyone was pretty stunned, for good reason. They were pretty good last year, but, certainly not one of the 15 best teams in the country. So, was that a surprise to you, or do you think they can live up to that, or do you think, not quite that good?
So I'd say 2 things. I'd say it was very surprising when I first saw it, and I was like, holy crap, how the hell is Ohio State 13th? But But then you do think about it a little bit and you go, okay, well, Ken Pom likes returning experience. They like he only ranks recruits if they're in a certain range. So it's not a very specific evaluation. So you look at it that way and you go, oh, okay, I understand why they're so high. But having said that, way overrated. There's no way they're going to finish 13th in the country or better. I think they're in position where they could be better than they were last year. And, just kind of take a couple feet back here. They make the NIT. They're sort of in that bubble conversation, but not that close to actually making the field. They were a good team. They trended up, but a couple bad losses early in the year really killed them in the RPI. But I think they can be better than that. They got Jaquan Lyle back, who was a really young, nice player for them. They got, as I said, a lot of experience coming back, which Ken Pom likes. But I don't see 13th, certainly. I'd kind of be surprised if they ended up in the top 25, to be honest.
All right. Well, we know that you're a Michigan guy. Derek Walton, Zach Irvin, still there, still kicking it over there in Ann Arbor. What's your projection on the Wolverines as they're ranked, 31st in preseason Ken Pom rankings? Maybe not a lot of people are talking about them up in that upper echelon of the Big Ten right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking Final Four, maybe national title. No, I'm just kidding. But I think Michigan, they're in a similar vein to Ohio State. I think they were a little bit better last year. Obviously Michigan made the tournament. Ohio State didn't. But I see them in kind of the same realm. They're bringing back the same pieces. I wrote my preview on Ohio State, and the example I used is, it's Thad Matta is a chef trying to make a new dish with the same, ingredients. He's trying to get a new recipe. And I think for Michigan, it's a lot of the same. You have the same pieces. Somehow you got to come out with a different result if you really want to make progress. The one wild card for Michigan is Maurice Wagner, who's going to play center for them this year. Showed some, sparks last year and really came on as the season progressed, but needed to put on weight, needed to get some more experience. And if he can elevate to that next level, Michigan's always struggled defensively. Well, I shouldn't say struggled, but they've always been weaker on the defensive side under Jen Beeline. And if he can help them there on the boards, we'll see if he can. But I do think Michigan could potentially get into that top 25 conversation, maybe get to the second weekend of the tournament.
Like the colors of the wall here, by the way?
I do. I appreciate it.
Had to bring that up.
So, and I don't want to go team by team here, but Northwestern is a team who, they faced Butler again this year. They haven't been to the tournament ever. It looks like things are maybe starting to turn for Northwestern. I mean, do you think they could finally make it to the NCAA tournament this year?
The classic question, the 100-year question in waiting. Yeah, I mean, I like the direction Northwestern's going in. If you just take a 1,000-foot view of the Wildcats where they've started, Chris Collins comes in a couple years ago. They really kind of maintain his first year in terms of wins, in terms of Ken Pom rating. But they've improved their Ken Pom rating each year. They've improved their wins. I will say last year's was kind of misleading. If anyone's followed Northwestern scheduling, they are the ultimate cupcake building athletic department, just pure cupcakes. And they really racked up the record as a result. But they are getting better. I think it's evident. The issue for them is that I think some of that progress is going to stall a little bit this year. And the reason why is because they're losing Alex Ola, who was their big-time center the last couple of years. And I think without him, it's going to be difficult to kind of keep ascending up that mountain. I do think they're going to make the NIT this year, which they haven't made in a few years. Most fan bases probably aren't that excited about that prospect, but Northwestern, it's a banner season. So I do think they're going to make the NIT, but if you talk to most Northwestern fans, they always have viewed next year as the year that they're really going to be in that tournament conversation.
Yeah. So Would you say John Gross is on a hot seat this year? Maybe the hottest seat.
I would say he has boiling water under him at this point. The thing about John Gross is that depending on your viewpoint, he's either a complete failure or he's just the most unlucky coach of all time. And the reason I say that is, again, he kind of has the opposite trajectory of Chris Collins, where his teams have been descending for the last couple of years. But if you are in the weeds sort of on Illinois and you're looking at them on a day-to-day basis, the injuries have been insane. The suspensions have been insane. There's a point last year where they're down to basically no depth, and they're trying to compete against like Indiana on the road and stuff. And to use the South Park quote, if you're going to do that, you're going to have a bad time. And I think John Gross is a relatively good coach. You just wonder how much sort of those off the court troubles have hit them. But if you look at this year's team, you either gotta do your work in the kitchen or get the hell out. And the reason why I say that is he has 5 quality starters. He has a ton. This is arguably his most talented team he's had in Champaign, and there's simply no excuse for him not to make the tournament this year, other than I guess incompetence, if you want to say that. He has the pieces, and if he doesn't get it done, I think they're going to have to move to someone else.
All right. Going away from the state of Illinois here, Penn State, they've improved a little bit under Pat Chambers. They have a really good recruiting class coming in this year, relatively speaking, for them. Should Nittany Lions expect some success this year, or would it be better suited to say that for 2017 and going forward?
Yeah, I'd kind of agree with the latter, and I think they're kind of in a similar vein as Northwestern here, where you can see the makings of something special down the line, but they're losing a lot of contributions from last year. I know every year, I kind of do the same thing I think you guys do, where you go through all the conference teams, and when you start at the bottom, you always get into that discussion whether it's good off-season attrition or bad. For instance, you're losing guys off of Rutgers. Probably not the worst thing in the world, considering the team was terrible. Yeah. But Penn State, obviously not as bad as Rutgers, but they're losing big-time scorers off the team, which on the one hand, is really concerning. On the other hand, the team wasn't all that great. So I think they're in that dynamic this year. I think the roster is getting better. I think the talent is getting better. But I do think the tricky part will just be, how are they going to manage the front court? They have Tony Carr, they have Shep Gardner in the backcourt, but the front court just looks like a lot of no-name guys. So I think they're a year away from really making noise in the Big Ten.
Yeah, certainly they'll be feeling the losses of Brandon Taylor, who was a success last year for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think we pretty much covered the Big Ten pretty thoroughly. I mean, we didn't really talk about Michigan State that much, but they'll probably be right around where they were last year and not take the fluke loss in the NCAA tournament. I mean, well, you can hope for them.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing I would throw out for Michigan State for your listeners here is just they have a lot of injuries in the front court right now, so expect them to struggle early on and then do the classic Tom Izzo where, February, March, they start coming around and everybody's like, where the hell has this team been for 3 months? But, yeah, so, I mean, I expect the Spartans to be pretty good this year, though.
Are you buying into the Miles Bridges is like an improved Draymond Green hype that's going on?
I don't know. I don't know if I buy. I don't know what it is with Michigan State people and like everybody being Draymond Green. You heard that all the time last year with Denzel Valentine. Like they are not similar at all. Now I will say Miles Bridges is closer to Draymond Green than Denzel Valentine, but I don't get why everyone has to be Draymond Green. Like why can't you just appreciate Miles Bridges on his own right? But.
Yeah, that's
yeah. So just go into the real near future here. Outside of Creighton, Wisconsin, is there a Gavitt game that you're actually looking forward to this year?
Gavitt game. Oh man, you're really stressing my memory here. I need to look at the schedule here. I don't remember the games offhand.
Not super inspired, just like it wasn't last year.
I know Purdue plays Villanova in West.
Yeah. I am very excited about that game. And that's a team I did want to mention before I got off, but I think Purdue is being tremendously undersold nationally. Last year, I was kind of the Big Ten skeptic on Purdue. I didn't necessarily buy into them, which to an extent, I was wrong on that because they made a lot of noise. But on the other hand, they did get upset in the first round, so I can still kind of claim I was right. But but this year I'm on the opposite side. I really like Purdue's roster this year. They got Swan again up front. They got Isaac Haas up front. Going to be very difficult to match up for anyone. Even Villanova, who obviously had a pretty good season last year. But I think Purdue has improved the backcourt significantly from where it was last year. And I think if they can shoot a little better, and the big issue for Purdue last year is they could not handle a press. I don't know why, but they just, as soon as someone would start pressing them, they just started turning over the ball. It turned into a disaster. They blew at least like 3 or 4 games because of that. I think they'll be able to handle it, not only because they brought in Spike Albrecht from Michigan, who was a really good passer, really good guy at controlling the ball, but also added Carson Edwards, who's looked really good so far in the preseason exhibition play and so on. So I think Purdue can give them a game. If not pull it out, we'll have to see. I'm curious to hear your guys' thoughts on that game.
Yeah, I think it's going to be obviously Nova's biggest test in the non-conference portion of their schedule, not including Virginia, but they have the luxury of hosting the Cavaliers this year. They have to go to Mackey to play Purdue this year, so that's going to be a big early test for them as well. So, like you mentioned, Haas and Swanigan certainly gives Purdue a bit of a matchup. I think a matchup victory against Nova, especially considering Nova doesn't have Amari Spellman since he's been ruled ineligible this year due to academic reasons. So, their height is certainly better than Nova's height. So if they're able to, make good of that, they can. But, what you mentioned about Purdue and performing poorly under a press, Nova certainly was able to make noise last year, especially in the NCAA tournament, using a full court press. So hopefully they've improved that, because they could make good use out of getting turnovers on their end. Rob, if you want to drop your thoughts in.
It's never easy to go on the road and win in college basketball, and to face a team that has a player like Swanigan and Haas coming back, and I believe Vince Edwards is back as well. That's a lot of solid talent coming back, even without AJ Hammonds and without a couple of the other guys that Purdue lost. I think Villanova probably still has a talent advantage, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Purdue is able to knock them off.
Yeah. Should be fun.
Thomas, before you go, if you want to give us your Final Four, I know it's early.
Oh, geez. Oh my God. I haven't even broken it down at all. I haven't thought about it. I guess off the top of my head, gotta pick Duke. I think they're absolutely loaded this year. I'm sure everyone hates me for saying that, but I gotta pick Duke. I think a quietly sleeping team is Indiana to make it. I think this is the year they finally break through in the tournament. Oddly, I think their regular season is going to be worse than it was last year, but I think they're going to break through. I like Oregon. I think they're stacked again, and obviously they proved last year that they're for real. I feel like there's always one crazy team that you never expect. So screw it. I'll just go with Richmond. I don't know. I'll pick someone random. But yeah, good stuff.
Thomas, if you want to give us an all Big Ten first team that doesn't have 10 players.
Oh, geez, yeah. Stupid Big Ten media picks, Big Ten players now. It's stupid and ridiculous. Yeah, so I think mine, from what I remember, I think I had Thomas Bryant from Indiana, Caleb Swanigan from Purdue, Peter Jock from Iowa, Mello Trimble from Maryland, and Nigel Hayes from Wisconsin. So pretty safe pick, but that would be my team right now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, thanks for joining us, Thomas. Really glad we could have you on here.
No problem. Thanks. I had fun. So we'll continue the Big East Big Ten rivalry this year, and it'll be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I'll see you guys.
Yep.
Take care. All right, that was Thomas Bindit from Big Ten Powerhouse, as well as I believe Mid-Major Madness as well with Russ.
Yes.
So you can read all of his stuff there, all of their stuff there. We poke fun with Big Ten Powerhouse.
They're good guys.
They are. They're very good guys. They do a lot of great work, and we definitely endorse checking their site out, as well as most, if not all, SB Nation sites. So.
All right, so Pac-12, getting back to it. If you're still listening at this point at the 2-hour mark, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Pac-12. Like we had been getting into.
Oregon's a favorite.
Oregon's the favorite for the first time in a while. It's not U of A. Arizona certainly going through their fair share of offseason issues this year.
Yeah. I might even put UCLA over Arizona, and I know it's something we talked about with Jeff about Lonzo Ball and a couple other nice pieces they brought in this offseason. Combined with Arizona losing, Ray Smith and possibly Alonzo Trier. They have Kobe Simmons coming in, who was a Big East guy, target for a while.
Yeah, I think I saw, or I keep seeing something about, what the hell is his name?
I think Chance Comanche is up in the air, too.
Yeah, that's who I was, Chance Comanche, I keep seeing.
I know they haven't said anything about Trier, but he's not in Hawaii.
Yeah.
So, right off the bat, to have to play Michigan State without a guy who's probably your best player, at least your best returning player.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah, I mean, they certainly have the benefit of having, Parker Jackson Cartwright as well, a junior on their team. But like you said, Trier's probably I would say easily the best returning player that they have looking at their roster right now.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And, they have Raleigh Elkins too.
Yeah.
Who is returning, but, he's probably going to maybe crack the starting lineup now with, Ray Smith being gone and Trier being out. So, yeah, I mean, a couple question marks for Arizona this year. And, I mean, I like Sean Miller. I think he's a very good coach.
Yes.
I think he's probably the best coach to not make a Final Four.
I would say easily. And then Mark Few and Chris Mack there as well. But
yeah.
Sean Miller is far and away the best coach to never make a Final Four. And really, not a lot of – I know people were discussing this over the summer.
Yeah.
But really, Sean Miller is like the West Coast version of John Calipari. Because Arizona typically recruits very, very well, and no one talks about it.
Yeah. Outside of UCLA, Oregon, and Arizona, I think Cal will be up there.
Yes.
And then it gets a little interesting with Colorado, Utah, and USC because, each of those three teams lost a lot to graduation of the NBA. So it's a matter of how they come back. I know USC has a couple nice players coming back.
Yeah, I know. I want to say it was Rob Douster of NBC Sports who wrote an article about how USC was like a victim of their own success in that they were very successful last year, obviously making the NCAA tournament and falling on the wrong side of a coin to a Providence buzzer beater that prior to the round of 32. But they had players like what's his name? Looking at the roster right now. Maytu, who was defensively for them, and a lot of the players were really good, and then they just they decided to bolt.
I think it was both Jacobs and Jovanovic that went to the draft. I think Jordan McLaughlin's still there. Obviously, Caden Reinhardt's not there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they lost a decent amount, and that's the price of being good, even if you're just good for 1 year, because that was obviously Andy Enfield's best year there by a long shot.
Oh yeah.
And Andy Enfield probably saved his job too.
Yes, yeah, because the return on investment at that point, because they were 11 and 20, they were 12 and 20 in his first year, and then
They got worse.
No, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I was looking at this wrong.
No.
They were 11 and 21 his first year, then 12 and 20 in his second year, and then of course last year they won 21 games.
So I think USC will be okay, and Arizona State will be okay in their second year of Bobby Hurley.
Yes.
Stanford obviously went through a transition. Washington, I think Markelle Fultz will be good. I think it doesn't necessarily matter how Washington is this year because, they have one of the best players in the country coming in next year.
Exactly. Yeah, I was going to say Washington might have like the best player in the conference, at least, as far as pro ready, because Fultz is obviously going to be a phenomenal player for the Huskies this year at point guard. He'll be very exciting to watch. You may want to, check out with Washington games for that reason. And the bottom of the Pac-12 is probably going to end up being Oregon State and then Wazoo, who hasn't really done anything.
I think Oregon State's actually pretty good, and they did make the NCAA tournament last year, but they lost Gary Payton, and they got a couple players like Stephen Thompson and Tress Tinkle who are good. They're sophomores; it's their team now, but they're younger, and losing Gary Payton, who did it all pretty much, is gonna kind of hurt them at least this year.
They do have some. I'm looking at their verbal commits page. They have 2 JUCO guys, and Ronnie Stacy and Keandre Dew, who should make some impact for them. But it's pretty much. You mentioned Stanford, Washington. You mentioned Stanford, Washington, Oregon State. I think they're like the second to last tier in Washington. I'm sorry, Oregon State. Washington State's kind of in their own tier at the bottom of the Pac-12.
Yeah.
That program needs a lot of saving, but you know how much I love Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
I got on that bandwagon before it even started last year. And
you've been on it really. You were, when we went and saw them play Louisville and Indianapolis, you were.
Yeah, I liked them even then when they were, when they trotted out the likes of. Let's see, let me go back and look. When they won 28 games with EJ Singler and Carlos Emery.
Joe Young.
Yeah, exactly. So.
And this is probably they were my champion last year. So
I liked them a lot last year. And the thing that's good about them this year, they are literally bringing everyone back except for Elgin Cook.
Yeah.
And Cook was obviously a very good player. But in the fact that they have Dylan Ennis back for another year of eligibility, this team won 31 games last year, maybe Elite 8, without Dylan Ennis.
Yeah.
I can't imagine what they're going to do this year with him.
Yeah.
Ennis is obviously a very productive player, and he'll know his role and play it well. And they still have Boucher. Brooks is obviously going to get healthy. But if he is, it's going to be very pivotal to their success. Dorsey's back for another year. He's probably going to be better.
Yeah.
I love Peyton Pritchard. Pritchard's probably going to do some work behind, Ennis and Casey Benson.
Yep.
They lost Kendall Small to a transfer, but Pritchard can step right in and fill in his shoes. The Ducks are going to be very, very, very good. Yes. I honestly think that they're more than marginally better than Arizona and UCLA. I would not be surprised if they won the Pac-12 by like 3 games.
Yeah.
They're going to be awesome.
Yeah. All right. So just on to the Big East games this weekend. I think we're only going to talk about 3 of them. And even talking about Xavier Lehigh is kind of a stretch. Xavier's not going to lose at home to Lehigh. Even though Lehigh's pretty good. But, I don't. But Marquette Vanderbilt is technically the first game of the season.
Yes.
Right up there with Villanova Lafayette. And, we talked about it with Jeff in the early part. That's a good test for Marquette. And they have a couple good tests in the first week facing, Vanderbilt, and then either Michigan or or definitely Michigan, and then either Pitt or SMU.
Yeah.
They didn't have a great non-conference last year. So if you can rack up a couple wins and, get right around that 20 mark where you're on the bubble, those will go a long way.
Yeah, I definitely agree, and I'm intrigued to see how Marquette plays against the size that Vanderbilt has, because they have a guy like Luke Cornett who's 7'1". He's probably going to be matched up against Luke Fisher, so we can kind of cancel that out, so to speak. But then you have Jeff Roberson, who's 6'6", Matthew Fisher Davis, their shooting guard is at 6'5", and then Riley LaChance is 6'2", so he'll match up well with all the guards they're going to be trying out. But they're going to have to watch out for Fisher Davis and Roberson, who is such a really good scorer. Last year, his offensive rating, I looked it up when I was talking about it before when Jeff was on the program here. His offensive rating last year was 138.
Yeah.
So he was a very, very productive offensive player for the Commodores last year, and I expect him to be the guy that Marquette zeroes in on and tries to stop as far as on defense.
And then the one other game I want to talk about is until Monday night, Vermont and Providence, which it's not going to be a cakewalk for Providence. It's especially, losing your first or losing, Bentel and Dunn. They're going to have to figure it out fast because they played the one exhibition game, and they did take care of business. They were down at the half, and then they pulled away against Carleton.
Yeah.
A pretty decent team from Canada.
I agree.
Vermont won 23 games last year.
And they are projected to win the America East on KenPom right now. Their projected record in that conference is 12-4 over Albany, who's 10-6. Catamounts I would imagine that they are a very experienced team, and taking a look at them, they certainly have a lot of upperclassmen. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys right now that aren't, transfers or walk-ons or what have you on that team, including 2 seniors and Dre Willis and Kurt Seidel. Hopefully I pronounced those names right. But, Vermont's an experienced team, so Providence is going to have their mettle tested pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so, those are the only 3 games that we're really going to preview. Everyone else should roll. But I will ask, does it scare you a little bit that Georgetown has a noon tip at home against a team that they should beat down?
Ooh, If it was anyone else other than USC Upstate, I would say yes. But USC Upstate is bad.
I think they're worse than Radford was last year. So
only marginal. Radford has finished the year at 222. USC Upstate 239.
But USC Upstate's at 324 right now on KenPom.
Ooh. No, they're 239 right now.
Or, yeah, that was from last year that they lost to something called Bob Jones last year. So
USC Upstate's playing a team after Georgetown called Mars Hill.
Yeah, so, I would really prefer if Georgetown didn't lose.
Yeah, they had better not. I like I said, if there was any other team other than USC Upstate, I would say maybe I'm a little alarmed. But USC Upstate is bad.
Yes,
very bad team. But they better not. They better not sleepwalk.
Yeah,
it needs to happen again. And rather not have Georgetown be at the butt of all of our jokes this year right now. At least wait until conference season to have that happen. Always.
Yes. All right. So we made it.
We did.
Finished this podcast. Season starts in, I think there's an early-ish couple games tomorrow around noon. That I'm not going to be watching. But
let me check.
I know the first game, like I said, is Marquette at 6:30. Obviously, we'll have all our stuff up, announcer pairings, since they're all out finally.
Exactly.
So
stay tuned for all that.
Yeah, I thought there was an early game tomorrow that might not be on television necessarily. ESPN is not working correctly.
Do you need info on times and whatnot?
What?
You need info on times and whatnot right now?
Yeah.
All right.
no,
Well,
I just want to see who played early in the day. It's
a couple teams do. Middle Tennessee plays the first game of the year at noon Eastern.
it's a lot of bad D1 teams playing a lot of D2 teams.
Yes.
Um,
Jackson State's playing something called Xavier LA. I'm guessing that's like Xavier Louis. Lipscomb's playing something called University of the South. In Miami, I was playing Muskingum.
the first D1 against D1 game is UMass Lowell against UMass. I think UMass Lowell's D1.
Yeah, no, they are. They are.
Yeah, so it's your first D1 game. So yeah,
I just want to know what Muskingum is.
yeah. But yeah, Vanderbilt Marquette is on at 6:30 Eastern.
CBS Sports Network.
If you don't watch that over Arizona Michigan State, we are not friends anymore.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that'll about do it here. I need to eat dinner.
Yeah. 10 o'clock Eastern. So.
9 o'clock. If you listened to the whole thing, either live or on podcast, thank you. Big thank you to Pierce Roberson, Jeff Parles, Russ Steinberg, Cam Newton, Brennan Zwierzinski, and
Thomas Bind it.
Thomas Bind it.
All join us.
I feel like I'm kind of losing my voice from this, which isn't great.
No, not great at all. Not great.
So yeah, we made it through the off season.
We did.
Be back Monday for a Gavitt Games preview. And yeah, that's all I got. Take it easy.
Yep.